Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very grateful that I can welcome you today with the very special guest of mine, Federico Fernandez, on our today's event, the political revolution in Argentina, 125 days of Milei's presidency. And, well, let us introduce ourselves, Federico. My name is Marcin Szekiel. I'm a project manager in the Polish American Leadership Academy. And Federico Fernandez is our today expert. Well, Federico, do you want to share something today about
Well,
yourself?
happily, yes, Martin. Well, thank you very much for for the invitation. Thank you to the organizers of the Polish American Leadership Academy, and to all the friends of at the Freedom and Entrepreneurship Foundation. To you, of course, Martin. To Jacek. To Sebastian, and to everybody who is part of that great organization that does so much for freedom in Poland, in Europe, and in the rest of the world as well, with the international programs that you have. So for me, it's a pleasure to be talking about a topic that for me, let's say, it's very dear to my heart, because it has to do with the current president of my country, of Argentina. For those who don't know me, my name is Federico. I am the president and founder of Fundación Internacional Bases, which is an organization that is headquartered in Rosario, Argentina, and that has been promoting classical liberal ideas for almost 20 years now. So a fact that makes me extremely proud, but also shows, the relentless pass of time.
Of course, we are very grateful that we can have you today. As I've mentioned, today's event is organized by Polish American Leadership Academy and, of course, Foundation of Freedom and Entrepreneurship. Of course, our topic is very aligned with our main goals of the foundation and our main goals of the academy. So, freedom, so entrepreneurship, and, well, of course, money. Federico, we will focus today about the Milei's presidency. And, well, you're a Milei supporter, as I believe, but you're also an expert about the economic affairs. What will you show us today? What will you present?
Well, what I would like to do, Martin, if that's okay with you, I have a short presentation. Don't worry with Justin. It's just some pictures to accompany what I'm saying. I want for the next 20-25 minutes explain my view on how and why Javier won, and then I would be very happy to talk to you about what's currently going on in Argentina. Also receive some questions if there are any from the audience. So if that's okay, we can do that.
Of course. So let us share the presentation.
Great. Let me see. It's been working the two times I tried. Of course, now that I want to do it, it may fail, but let's see.
No worries
Oh,
about that.
great. Can you see it properly?
Of course, I believe we can
Great.
see.
Great. Okay. Well, I'll try to keep it, as I said, 20-25 minutes max. Please, if I extend more than that, feel free to tell me that I should shut up. Okay. As I said, in the next couple of minutes, I want to do, let's say, with all of you, four things. Firstly, try to explain how and why Javier Milei reached to the presidency of Argentina. Secondly, how he became the focal point of deeper changes in society. I see, and I'm going to spoil my own presentation, but I see Javier's reach to power. It's a combination of himself, and he's a very unique individual, but also of trends that were going on in Argentina for quite some time. And in a way, Javier, and with this, please, I don't want to take any credit from him, because, as I said, he's indeed unique. But he also, I think, was the right person at the right time. The third thing I want to try to at least hint to a certain extent is what his presidency means for the country, for the region. And fourth and last, why Argentina can dream again. Before I do that, just let me tell you a few words about my organization. As I said, Fundación Internacional Bases is an organization that was born in Argentina but we are quite active in Latin America and in other parts of the world. We're also members, we're very proud members of the We Are Innovation Network, a network that defends innovation all over the world, and that, by the way, the Freedom and Entrepreneurship Foundation is also a member, and we're very, very happy and proud to be part of the same network with our good friends from Poland. Our foundation, as I said, has been around for quite some time, almost 20 years. This year we are celebrating our 20th anniversary, and we've been doing, let's say, a lot of things regarding very different topics. Our work has been featured in some of the most important publications all over the world. We've done events in many countries in Latin America and in Europe as well. If you want to know more, you can visit fundacionbases.org. We have some information in English and some publications in English as well. And we're about to start our call for interns in 2024. So also, if you are interested in that, please follow us on social media or write us on our website, and we'll keep you informed about the call for internships in the near future. But let's go to Argentina. I want firstly to try to explain what kind of country Javier Milei has, let's say, had to face, has to deal with, in a way, a country that is changing. But I want to try to explain you in 80 years of history in very short time, but I think it will be useful. And let's say the very first idea I want to try to convey to you is that for a very long time, I would say 8 decades or so, Argentina has been dominated by a pro-state, pro-leftist, you could say, mindset. That has permeated the cultural, the political, and the economic, let's say, discourses of the country. And we could say, putting a date for a long-term phenomenon can have some arbitrariness, but we could say that since Juan Domingo Perón and Evita Perón got into power in 1946, since then until recently, that was the case. That started. The state took, let's say, the driver's seat position of the economy. The market was always frowned upon, looked suspiciously. The state never made a mistake. If there was something that was not working, it was either because of some bureaucrat was not doing their proper job, or because, and this is extremely funny and sad at the same time, or because the very small hints of markets that still existed were blamed. So the state could never do anything wrong. And another very sad phenomenon that happened in Argentina, and this is also related to how Javier could come, let's say, guns blazing and resonate with the society so much, is that this statist mentality permeated the whole political spectrum. It's not that you had, let's say, the Peronists on the one hand, who were the pro-state, anti-market faction, and then you had more pro-markets, pro-private property, entrepreneurship groups that maybe were a minority, but were there and had a very defined point of view, worldview. No, everybody became a Peronist in a way. So much so that even the militaries who interrupted the democratic process several times in Argentina tried to be Peronists just without Perón. They just didn't like Perón, and they definitely didn't like Evita. but let's say in their conception of how a society should be organized, how the economy of the country should work, it was basically as Peronists as you could get. And this, let's say, hegemonical march over the institutions, of course, also took over the educational apparatus, universities, but also the whole education system of the country, and media. Needless to say, this environment almost it became a jungle for people and even politicians who were more pro-markets, who were more classical liberal oriented, and presented almost a landmine that you had to try to navigate as best as you could. This deep-seated statist mentality that permeated the whole of the country, of course, had, I would dare to say, terrible consequences with the economy and with the, let's say, with how the social fabric of the country started to deteriorate, because Argentina, thanks to this basically unanimous thought that the state should be put at the front and center of everything, Argentina became an over-regulated and hyper-taxed country that was commanded by a spendaholic state. So it was quite difficult. There were many victims, as you can imagine, from this situation. Started with workers themselves, but also investors, people who saved money and repeatedly got that money got stolen by different governments. But this situation also created an oligarchy in a way, because there were many people, and again, think this was a very long process. We are talking of a process of 75 to 80 years, more or less. This also created many people whose existence was extremely easy and simple thanks to this. Naturally, politicians and public officials in general, cronies, of course, receivers of handouts by the government. So there were certain groups that lived very well thanks to this situation. And not only that, as I was explaining you earlier, this almost unanimous thinking permeated everything and alienated with time, totally alienated this oligarchy, particularly the ruling class, from the rest of society, because the ruling class was talking to them only to themselves and basically patting themselves in the back all the time. They started living in an echo chamber, and I think many of them still live in an echo chamber. And they didn't understand what happened to the country thanks to this kind of statist mentality. And what happened to the country was this, that in 1946, when Perón took power, Argentina was still among the top 10 countries in the world related to GDP per capita. And that has declined dramatically. Today, Argentina is worse probably than what we see today. I found this up to 2019, and I know it's reliable, so that's why I'm showing you this. But the situation today, I'm sure, is even worse than this. So let's say this statist mentality was not free for the country. It didn't come cheap. It came at a huge cost, and it was a process, again, that took decades. But, in Spanish, we say there is no evil that lasts 100 years. Well, Peronism lasted 80. So hopefully we're almost there, or, even the longest night must end. And this brings us to 2015. This is, by the way, why 2015? For two things. Firstly, this picture, this is apparently This is a picture of Javier Milei's first media appearance in Argentina in 2015. But by 2015, and again admitting that this date, these dates could be slightly arbitrary, but by 2015, I believe that no matter how much propaganda, both the educational apparatus and media were regurgitating in favor of the populist, statist regime, the king was naked, because the decadence by then was palpable. Allow me to come back to this. When you see this, I mean, this is, let's say, quite telling in itself. And if I didn't want to share with you numbers of poverty, because this would become extremely depressing very, very, very quickly. In Argentina, there's a very honorable tradition of think tanks, classical liberal intellectuals, public intellectuals, people that are known, beyond our bubbles. But it was always difficult for them to deeply connect with the whole of society. And Javier Milei, in that regard, he very quickly open total new horizons for the ideas of liberty in Argentina. And this, again, and sorry to repeat myself, I really think it has to do with Javier's uniqueness, but also with demands that were coming from the society and that were not being met. And we'll go to that in a couple of minutes. But allow me to emphasize about that again. And in 2015, there was also something that was happening. As I said, the king was naked, and there was other thing. We were, in this late stage, you could say, of statist worldview imperialism in the country. And the left, in a way, became victim of its own success, because you cannot be the establishment and at the same time be the counterculture. And since the dominance, the hegemony that the left had over culture was so vast, so great, liberalism de facto became, I'm using liberalism, classical liberalism, and libertarianism as synonyms here in this talk. So liberalism de facto became the counterculture. And this gave liberalism a very interesting position, because it's not only the right set of ideas if you want to reform a country, so you want it to become more open and richer, but also it became, let's say, the new and the challenging. That was, if you were, let's say, a young boy or a young girl around 2010 or something, everything that came from your grandparents, parents, teachers at school or professors at university, the traditional media, everything that had to do with the more canonical channels of transmission of culture, everything was pro-state and pro-leftist. So even as I said, the opposition parties who formally were not social democrat or pure socialists, if you wanted to rebel, the only thing you had was classical liberalism, and this really helped. I'm sure this really helped the cause of liberalism a lot. The other thing is that classical liberalism became part or started thriving in the same kind of social cracks. There was this huge wall of statist mentality, and you started to see certain cracks, certain cracks in the wall. And in those cracks were the same cracks that marginalized people, young people, try to inhabit, because they are a little bit edgier, a little bit outside of the norm. And liberalism it was totally a part of that. Liberalism was what you found in forbidden or banned books. It was that knowledge that nobody talked about. You started finding liberalism where? On YouTube, now on Twitch, on social media, memes, podcasts, not in the legacy media, not in traditional media, not in TV channels or cable or newspapers or things like that. That it's still, well, then we can talk about how the Austrian School of Economics, for instance, is seen today in Argentina, which is quite interesting. But that also united, let's say, classical liberalism, youth, and certain kind of rebellion. And Javier's popularity also started reaching, let's say, demographics that were extremely elusive to classical liberalism for decades in Argentina. One of them is what you could call pop art. And I'm going to talk now, I'm going to mix many things that were happening, both when particularly when Javier was still an economist. You have to understand that, as I said, Javier Milei's first TV appearance is in 2015. And he only ran for a member of parliament in 2021 and became president in 2023. Before that, it was not clear that Javier would make a jump to politics. Let's say, if you would have asked me in 2020, I don't know if I would have been sure that he would run. So, but even Javier Milei, as the public intellectual, he connected with young people and with all the pop art expressions and pop culture expression of them very, very quickly. And this, thanks to these very interesting messages starting circulating in levels of society that classical liberalism never reached, particularly, as I said, young people. It's very interesting that many of these, let's say, different instances of pop culture started emphasizing on the dangers of Keynesianism and cronyism. They started emphasizing against the tax burden and with a very strong anti-tax ethos. They felt repulsion against state abuse. The pandemic did also a lot to help with that. But even before the pandemic, this very, and if the state is very powerful, it's going to step on, it's going to step on our heads. That feeling was present already. Young people, via memes and via different expressions, they started denouncing the fake solidarity rhetoric of the state, that the state is so wonderful that takes money from you to supposedly use it better than you would use it yourself, and they called that solidarity. The other thing is how Milei was portrayed and the associations that they made of his ideas that I think were amazing. Milei was seen as the ultimate troll, basically, and as an enemy of the state, as the anti-state, and that's why they loved him. Young people loved him. But the other thing, and these issues, I really think I thought I would never seen in my life. For young people started presenting liberalism not as the oppressor of the working class, which was the traditional representation of liberalism, but as the liberator, which, by the way, we all know that's the case. And Milei was literally portrayed as a superhero, an economist and a public intellectual, and an economist that sometimes spoke with a lot of economic jargon, and it was not as easy to follow. So there was something. There's definitely, again, there's an identification with Javier. There are, let's say, even aesthetic issues that helped Javier, the hair, and many other things. How in your face he was in certain TV appearance, particularly at the beginning. Those videos got viral on social media. I mean, nobody watched them on TV. Nobody watches TV basically anywhere, but the importance of those appearances, that then young guys and girls made short clips for social media, and those videos got brutally viral. But there was something else as well. I think the rhetoric of Javier would not have clicked had there not been there a demand for something else as well. Another instance, and this comes from an event that Fundación Bases organized in 2018. I hope you can see to the right, that's Javier seated giving a speech. This was an Austrian economics conference that we organized in 2018 in Rosario, our city. As you can see, there was a full room. It's a very big room, by the way. The picture doesn't make it so much justice. But there was something that myself and some of my colleagues picked that we couldn't believe. This is 2018. The conference is mostly an academic conference, and Javier came to talk about a quite sophisticated issue at the conference. This is a 3-day event, it's a long event, and of course we serve coffee breaks regularly, and for that we hire a catering company. When it was the turn for Javier to speak, the young guys and gals who were working for the catering company, they asked us if they could leave everything prepared for the next coffee break, but if they could come and see Javier Milei. That had never happened in an Austrian conference before. This was something you could see that there was something, something clicked, and Javier was, let's say, instrumental for that click to happen. But I think there was a demand for what Javier was offering. But this really, I really love this anecdote. We were so many years trying to promote the ideas of the Austrian School of Economics, and achieving that level that people, all kinds of people want to listen what an Austrian economist is saying. It was unbelievable, really. And of course we said yes, and they really enjoyed listening to Javier. Another group, and this group also is very much related to innovation, and they understand the power of innovation and how the labor market is changing, and the possibilities that innovation gives them, are gig economy workers, particularly the workers of delivery platforms such as Uber Eats, Rappi, Pedidos Ya, and things like that. They became immediately like staunch Milei supporters, and these guys went so far that they organized not one, not two, but several anti-union demonstrations, because different governments wanted to forcefully unionize them, and they fought tooth and nail to avoid that, because they were extremely happy of how they were associated with the platforms. They didn't want to have a regular job. They didn't want to go work from 9 to 5 or things like that. They really appreciated the freedom and the way in which they could partner with different platforms in order to do some work and make some money. And the final frontier, as I like to call it, is Milei also reached high school students. Just let me show you. This is a silly video from last year. This is from the presidential campaign. Let's hope it works. It's only 30 seconds. As you saw, they were stamping bills with the Milei 2023. By the way, stamping bills is illegal, but the currency in Argentina is worthless, so probably that is definitely not a crime. What they did to the currency is a crime. But these were guys at high school. Again, a libertarian presidential candidate being, this is not, because usually these are the things that happen to the left, never to somebody from the libertarian perspective. And this is the kind of impact that Javier had. But again, these are the other trends, the more profound trends that I also think relate with the phenomenon of the hype of classical liberalism in Argentina. This is a poll, by the way, an opinion poll that Somos Innovación, We Are Innovation, organized by the end of 2019, with the idea of publishing it in 2020 and do a big event in Latin America. Well, that didn't happen because of the pandemic, as you can imagine. But in any case, the document is extremely important. And as far as I know, is the first time that an opinion poll like this was done in Latin America. The idea was to know what people thought about innovation and how they saw innovation acting in their own lives. It's not that we were looking which country has the most startups or which country has the most venture capital or anything like that, or unicorns. It's just the societies, what do they think they are? And in the case of Argentina, as you can see, the results are very positive in the whole of the countries that we polled. And this makes me extremely optimistic for the future. But in Argentina, we're talking about Argentina, 85% of the people that we polled considered that innovation is crucial for economic growth and the creation of jobs in the country. The study, by the way, I can share with you this opinion poll if you want to take a look. It's a very interesting survey. The study was quite comprehensive, and I cannot go in detail. I'm just going to show you this slide. But just to give you a gist of the conclusions, the main conclusions was that in the whole of the countries, in the 5 countries, but in Argentina for sure, there was a deep desire for more innovation and more openness. And think for a second, was this need met by the overarching statist view that the country had? This is impossible. And these people were, and this I had a lot, after we did this opinion poll, I had a lot of, most of them, private talks with politicians of my country and of other countries. And I always told them, there is an unmet, let's say, there are needs that are not being met so far. These people are in search of a champion, particularly in a country like Argentina, in which regulation, prohibition, and frowning upon the market, private property, and private initiative was almost a religion. These people were completely left alone. And they were looking for something. They understood they have innovation in their phones. So they were looking, they access to a completely different world through their phones, through their computers. And this trend, I think, also is part of the explanation of what's going on in Argentina as well. There are other things that I cannot go with you now for time matters, but this I also want to emphasize that there were other things changing. It's not only the presence of Javier Milei, no matter how, let's say, unique he is. And Peter Thiel, some time ago, he said this, that I think it's extremely clear, and I really like this phrase: for the future to have power over the present, it has to be different from the present. And this is exactly what was lacking in Argentina, and this is what Javier brought back to the table, to the discussion. Javier, in a way, I think emerged because he is the perfect embodiment of an absolute rupture with the past and the present. He was the only candidate that was offering a different future. In Argentina, the political discussion particularly, had deteriorated so much that we all know that, in general, particularly presidential candidates promise whatever, and then, we know it's all lies, but, okay. In Argentina, that wasn't even happening, because the commitment to the status quo was so deep that even the political discourse was becoming narrower and narrower, and we all knew that the future was going to be a deteriorated version of the present. That's it, nothing else. Javier was absolutely disruptive because he was adamant that he was going to break with everything. He was not proposing a better management of decadence. He wanted to do a complete U-turn. And in that sense, Javier was the candidate of the future. And again, there were a lot of people who were looking for a different future, for a better future, for something that was not exactly like the present. And that was Javier. And this allowed Javier, and Martin, don't worry, I'll be finishing in 2 minutes. I don't know how long I've been speaking, but I suppose longer than I wanted. This allowed Javier to basically run a campaign that in any other country and in any other circumstances would have been suicidal. Because Javier told the truth all the time. He was very clear about the kind of reforms that he wanted to apply if he were elected president. And he was also extremely clear that at the beginning, these reforms and these changes that the country desperately needed were going to be extremely painful. Javier's campaign, presidential campaign, was basically promising blood, sweat, and tears for a while, not forever, but definitely he was extremely clear about that. For 80 years, Argentina, as I showed you, has been in decline, jumping from crisis to crisis. Javier, and we can talk about that in the next few minutes, is facing, better said, and will face many challenges. But Javier Milei has an absolute advantage that probably everybody who is watching this now knows as well as I know. Classical liberal reforms work. Like I think Ben Powell says, show me a country that has a free market oriented policy, and what I will and what you will see is a country that is either rich or is growing very strongly. Show me a country that has anti-free market, anti-private property policies, and what you will see is a country that is either poor or stagnating. We know that classical liberal reforms work, and that is what Javier is definitely trying to implement in the country. And for the first time in decades, we have a government with the right set of ideas and a population that is committed to accompany that government. So, if you ask me, I am convinced that the long-awaited renaissance of Argentina has finally begun. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much, Federico, for this very interesting lecture. And I can see that right now in the comments that we have a lot of inquiries about, Milei's presidency and about the Argentinian state right now. Are you ready to answer some of them? Of course. So let's start with the first one. What is the current support for Milei? Do people who voted for him are still supporting him?
Yes. The support for Milei is extremely strong. The opposition is in complete disarray, even though they have a lot of institutional power. That is for something. But let's say in order, let's say measured in public opinion and things like that. And again, there are two things that play in favor of Javier. Firstly, I believe people were demanding what Javier is offering. And the second is that Javier was extremely clear about what he was going to do, and what was going to happen in the short term. He never say, "Hey, vote for me. In 6 months you'll get a new car and holidays in the Caribbean." No, not at all. So no, support is not going down. In certain aspects, I would say support for Javier is going up.
That's a very interesting thing to say because, well, as you have mentioned, some of the reforms were very radical, but, well, let's see whether the support will sustain. The another question that we have, how did Milei's win shape the political sector in Argentina? Are there any other parties who adopted free market rhetorics?
That's a very good question. Um, that's an extremely good question. How can I put this? In Argentina, I mean, the political landscape of Argentina has been changing for the last 15, 20 years, has been changing a lot. We had, let's say, for the last 10 years or so, there were two big blocks that were articulated regarding where you stood in front of the Kirchner family. The Nestor Kirchner, and then Nestor Kirchner passed away, and then his wife was president, and she became basically the most important figure of Argentina's politics until Javier, probably. And they were, you could consider them populists in the worst meaning of the term, and it was either you were Kirchnerista or anti-Kirchnerista. That was, let's say, the separation. The issue, and that is, I think that is the major mistake that Mauricio Macri's party committed. Argentina did a great thing in 2015, which was getting rid of populism via voting, which many of our neighbors in the region, in Latin America, have not been able to do. In some countries like Venezuela, there are no elections anymore, or Nicaragua. But in some other countries, it's very difficult because it's really very difficult to get rid of populists while they get into power. Argentina did so, but unfortunately, the management of the economy and also the total lack of reform zeal that the administration of Mauricio Macri had was literally like 4 years of, these are nicer guys, but that's it. And I want to come back to the thesis that I've been presenting. I think this was the main mistake of Mauricio Macri, the major mistake, because he would have been supported if he became a radical reformer. Of course, this is, I cannot prove this to you, but what I can prove you is that Mauricio Macri lost in 2019, and in 2023 we have Milei. We don't have, let's say, another vanilla opposition in name only president. So what's going on now? Milei won. You have, it's interesting because the three main presidential candidates were not brutally anti-markets. I mean, the candidate of the Kirchnerists, of the Peronists, was somebody that, at least in name, it was not a Chavista or was not like a mega populist who admired Cuba. This doesn't make him a friend of the markets, but at least he was not a total savage. Let's put it in those words. Macri's party, the coalition called Cambiemos, Let's Change, also ran with a center-right alternative, but again, they fell. They were victims of their own contradictions, and Javier was obviously the more pre-market and pro-freedom candidate.
Federico, there are a lot of more questions. Just to sum it up, would you say, like, yes, the political scene became a more free market, or the opposition is basically still going with the old rules?
It's morphing. Some are becoming more pro-market. Milei's coalition is growing and is definitely going to grow, but there are a lot of entrenched interests that make many, particularly members of parliaments and senators, still very much of a statist and anti-free markets mentality.
Of course. Okay, the next question I will have to translate to you.
Please.
So, apparently, Milei reversed the personal income tax reduction after his predecessor. So, is that true? Because, come on, libertarians shouldn't do that. It's like the very first thing that the libertarian should not do. Why did he do that, and what are the reasons for this action?
Yeah, there are, this was, there were some changes that were applied last year to the personal income tax that were done by the previous administration, basically as just as a dog whistle to try to get votes. I'm sure Argentina is going to go sooner than later through a dramatic and very positive, sorry, dramatic is not the best, through a tax reform. And by the way, from Fundación Bases and also We Are Innovation, we are working on a plan that will make, let's say, the flat tax policy as the linchpin of the reform we want to see in Latin America, in Argentina for regarding taxation. Argentina needs to eliminate a lot of taxes. There is apparently, because now these things are about to be discussed in Congress, there could be a comeback to the old system that was valid until 6 months ago. And that has to do with the relationship of the national government and let's say, the federal government and the provinces, because this also had impacted very badly in the provinces. So I think if this happens, this is going to be a very temporary measure. That in any case, a massive tax reform is coming to Argentina, and that tax reform is going to be pro-market and pro-growth for sure. I can't hear you, Marcin.
I'm very sorry for that. One more time. How does the Argentinian people react to the change in international course? I mean, Milei is supposed to be very pro-Western. However, the previous government was making some moves to the BRICS movement. So, how does the Argentinians' position in the international community look like right now?
Yeah, well, that's an excellent question, and it's almost the answer is in the question. The former government was pro-China and pro-Russia. That was not the feeling of most Argentinians. The previous government was, let's say, had a horrible position regarding the war in Ukraine, which was not how most Argentinians felt. In fact, Argentina's attempt at entering the BRICS was something that happened literally when the previous government was about to leave, that nobody was requesting. That it's not that there were, let's say, public demonstrations in the streets. We want to enter the BRICS because, the Ayatollahs are so great and we want to be associated with them. No, that was not the case. So I think in many ways, this is the kind of policies that Javier and his diplomatic team are implementing are totally more in tune with what are the feelings and the desires of the Argentinian society. This was totally, this association with Putin and the government of Russia, this association with Xi Jinping and the government of China, this was completely artificial and part of the crazy ideology of the government, not a social demand.
Of course. And this is a very interesting question too. What happened to the idea of dollarization? Is it still on the table? Does Milei still try to force it? And what's your personal view about it?
Well, I thank you, Sebastian, by the way. I think I know that gentleman. let's see. I think dollarization is still on the table, and I think dollarization is going to happen sooner than many people think. I believe that the current finance minister is probably the ideal person in the, for his technical qualities if you want to dollarize the economy. And I think for tactical reasons, Milei is not talking about dollarization all the time, because that could, let's say, create certain incentives and expectations that could, it's better probably to do it without announcing it with a lot of, without announcing it before. I believe that dollarization for Argentina is a must. Why? Because I love the dollar? No, I don't love the. I mean, the dollar is definitely better than the Argentinian peso. The dollar, we all know that it's a flawed currency that is, created by the Federal Reserve, with all the problems that has. But why the dollarization is extremely important for Argentina? Because the experiences in other countries, particularly Ecuador, shows you that dollarization has a feature that it's almost impossible to come back after you dollarize. And if we want to go, and this is what I think Javier and his team are going to do. They will first dollarize, and then they will eliminate legal tender. But it's extremely important that the elimination of legal tender is once you don't have any national currency anymore. Because if you still have a national currency, then, and you eliminate legal tender, then you can, reimpose legal tender and force everybody to the national currency. When you eliminated the national currency and people are saving usually in dollars, and this would be the market choice. People in the haven for people in Argentina is the US dollar. So if you do that, it's almost impossible that this measure could be backtracked. So I think I'm a great defender of, I think it's a way. Dollarization in Argentina is like a twofold, let's say. On the one hand, it's a recognition that the Argentinian political class cannot issue currency. Argentina has had like 7 instances of hyperinflation, has destroyed many national currencies in the past. Now, I mean, the peso that was 1-to-1 when it was born, now is, with the dollar, now is 1,300 to the dollar. So that tells you what happened to our currency, what they did to it. So it's a recognition of that. And the other thing, it's a way to finally abolish our local currency and probably never come back to that. Let's like literally, locking the gate and throwing the key forever. So I think the steps will be dollarization and then elimination of legal tender, and people will be able to do contracts in Bitcoin, Swiss francs, Polish zloty, or whatever they want, and that would be ideal.
And I will have a personal follow-up to this question. Can you explain to our audience how did it happen? Why did 1 year ago you could buy 200 pesos for $1? Right now, I think it's above 800. Weren't the reforms of Milei supposed to make the currency stronger? How can you explain it?
Sorry, how can I explain what exactly?
Like, the devaluation of the Argentinian peso to the dollar in the recent year. Because as I've mentioned, 1 year ago, you could buy 200 pesos for $1. Right now, you can buy 800 pesos for $1.
Yeah,
How did it
it's
happen?
even worse than that. But well, there was, this is the road to hyperinflation is like going bankrupt. Is very, very slow for a long time, and then very, very quickly for a short time. And let's say the deterioration. This is something that Javier Milei's administration needs to be credited with. his government basically saved Argentina from going through going again to the total destruction of the currency and hyperinflation on steroids, because that is where we were aiming. Argentina, like I tried to very briefly explain, this is a process of many decades, and particularly in the last 10 years or so, we had very bad management of the economy. The Macri tried to do certain things, and to a certain extent, he could accommodate certain things. But then, even during the last year of his presidency, some of the variables of the economy started going down again. And then you had, particularly the last 4 years, between 2019 and 2023, people who were crazy money printing maniacs. So that, you just put, you can put any of these guys in charge of whatever, I don't know, the Central Bank of England, the European Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, you'll have hyperinflation, sooner than later, because it's the only thing they can do. And that is what happened. It's just a grotesque mismanagement of the monetary policy, using money printing in order to pay basically for everything, because the government has horrible deficits that cannot cover with anything, because nobody trusted in Argentina. They couldn't even go to foreign debt. They couldn't get money in the markets. So it was just printing. Of course, the pandemic didn't help, and this invigorated the money printing insanity. And that's what you get. Argentina was this close to go to hyperinflation, literally.
Thank you for this answer. We have another question in Polish language. I will, make a translation for you. So basically, does Javier Milei has a plan to adopt Bitcoin into the financial system? Basically, whether does he have a plan like the El Salvador? Will the Bitcoin be a new element in Argentinian economy?
That's a good question. I wouldn't. I think Javier was running the presidential campaign. When he was running for president, what he was saying is that he wanted to become president, not to get the power himself, but to give the power back to the people. And we all know, I mean, this is not a demagogic statement. It's what any classical liberal, Austrian economics libertarian believes. And I think, as far as I know, and please, I'm not take this with a grain of salt, I think Javier has not talked too much about Bitcoin, but the times he's been very positive about it. I think, let's say, the views that he has for Bitcoin or for other cryptocurrencies, or for other currencies for that matter, is that let's give power to people to use them as they please and as they see fit. And in that regard, I don't think, and I think this is positive, I don't think Bitcoin will become legal tender as it is in El Salvador, but it will play the role that Argentinians want to give it. So definitely, I'm sure Javier and his administration are, let's say, pro crypto, pro Bitcoin in particular. So there is not an enemy of any of these alternative coins, for sure. On the contrary, and let the markets decide. That, I think, is a philosophy. I think that it's the right one.
Okay, I have a next question, which is actually a question for me as a manager of the academy. So I will allow myself to answer that in Polish. Federico, if you don't mind. We have a question about the... Cóż, przeczytam się na polski. Mamy pytanie o nagrody w tegorocznej edycji Polsko-Amerykańskiej Akademii Liderów. Słuchajcie, moi Państwo, słuchajcie wszyscy oglądający. Polsko-Amerykańska Akademia Liderów rozwinęła się niesamowicie. W tym roku mamy najwspanialsze nagrody, jakie kiedykolwiek mieliśmy w tej edycji. Oprócz możliwości zdobycia naprawdę wyśmienitej nauki od naprawdę światowej klasy ekspertów. W tym roku mamy 2 moduły. Moduł podstawowy z kursami online oraz moduł zaawansowany, profesjonalny, gdzie możecie pojechać do luksusowego hotelu i spotkać się z takimi ludźmi jak Peter Straub czy na przykład Patryk Rojewski. Zachęcamy do udziału w Akademii, gdyż w tym roku tak naprawdę fundujemy Wam w 95% wyjazd na projekt Arizona, czy też dajemy bilety na konferencję Liberty International w Teksasie. Jest również kurs Asbiro, czy też oczywiście Cycle Freedom. Nie zapomnijmy również o możliwości stażu w Fundacji Wolności i Przedsiębiorczości, a także wielu innych nagrodach. Zapraszamy do wejścia na naszą stronę, zaznajomienia się z nagrodami i na ten moment przejdźmy dalej do pytań do naszego eksperta. Okay, Federico, we will be back for the English language, for something that you actually can understand. So, are working unions strong in Argentina? Are they a real threat for Milei as the strikes go on?
This is a joke for legal reasons. This is a joke what I'm going to say at the beginning. A very good friend of mine once told me that in Argentina there is not a mafia like Don Corleone style because we have the unions already. For legal reasons, that's a joke, by the way. But no, yes, unions are strong. Unions have a mafia-like component and behavior, and Javier is going head-on against unions and for a labor market modernization, because Argentina has laws that basically Perón copied from fascist. Let's say Argentina has laws that Perón put in the country in 1946 that were copying from fascist Italy in the 1930s. So let's say it's 100 years of backwards thinking. But unions are strong, and they are going to be a tough cookie. Let's say, yes, they are a threat. I think he will overcome. They are strong. They have a lot of money. Javier is going against how they get funding, because again, since Argentina copied a lot of legislation from fascist Italy, they get coercively, they get money from workers. You get, let's say, you do certain activities and you become part of the union, like it or not, and you pay the union, of course, like it or not. So he's going against all those things. They have also created many labor laws that make it extremely difficult to hire people, because you expose yourself to a lot of liability. A very good economist from Argentina, Gustavo Lazzari, I remember he used to say that in Argentina it's easier to get married and get divorced than to hire an employee and fire them. So that tells you, and probably he's right, this is not an exaggeration. So that tells you a lot about the kind of labor legislation we have. And yesterday there was a demonstration supposedly to defend public university, and the unions were the main actors. I mean, most of those guys probably don't know how to read, but they were defending higher education, supposedly. But anyway, yes, I think Javier will prevail, but we have to keep an eye on how the unions behave, because it's going to be a tough battle for sure.
And I will let myself ask, as a brief moment of fresh air, a less political question. As for now, what can you tell of the differences between living in Poland and living in Argentina? How is your life in Poland? How is your life in Warsaw compared to what have been in Argentina?
That's a good question. Let's say, I would say there are many differences. The main one has to do, and this is quite sad of the country of Argentina. Argentina, as I said, has gone through a very steep decline for a very long time. And that, of course, has a huge impact, let's say, on your income, on your, let's say, or the kind of services and goods you can access, the things you can do, that's for sure. But that is not the worst thing. The worst thing, as I see it, that happened in Argentina, and compared to other parts of the world, definitely Poland, but other parts of the world as well, is the deterioration of, let's say, of your quality of life in probably more important things than material things. It's very difficult to live a quiet life in Argentina because you have to be careful all the time that you won't get robbed. People use, for instance, backpacks in Argentina are front bags, and men, use them, and they look like as if they were pregnant, and you look like ridiculous. But if you keep it in the back, you run the risk of being robbed, of somebody taking it. People have to be careful all the time. This, let's say, rise of criminality is a total killer of the social fabric, because you are afraid of everybody all the time. So, for the criminals to be free in the streets, you need to live in lockdown. You need to live in a jail. So everything is with bars. Everything is with different locks and several locks and keys, and being afraid all the time and not trusting your fellow countrymen or women, and that is I think the biggest difference. And sometimes people in more advanced countries take certain things for granted that they shouldn't. I'm not saying that Poland or other countries in Europe or other countries, let's say what you could call the first world, don't have issues. I'm sure they do, and I'm sure Polish people know those issues better than I do. I'm here, sometimes I'm not, because I travel a lot. So, and I'm a foreigner, so it's a different story. But you should, people should not take those things for granted, because being able to know that you can go free outside, that nothing is going to happen to you, that things in general work, is something that it's basically priceless.
Be grateful for what we have. That's a very nice message. Okay, let's go back to the politics. Adrian asks, his situation with employee unions is probably a little bit the same as the Margaret Thatcher had. Well, do you expect the same issues like Margaret Thatcher had with the miners, with the case of Milei?
It's a good question. It's let's say, to give an idea to Adrian, most of the first reforms that Javier has proposed, and they are still either waiting to be ratified or to be voted in Congress, have to do with reforming unions, take power away from them, and liberalizing the labor market. So, I mean, this is going to be a big battle. And they know, I mean, these guys have been, let's say, kings for many decades now, and they won't relinquish power. So it's absolutely needed. And as I said, in Argentina, I have witnessed, I mean, we have witnessed, it's amazing, anti-union demonstrations, because socially they are by now hated, because you have people who earn salaries who make very little. And that's let's say the 50% who at least work with everything, under the law, you could say. Then you have most of the people, 50%, perhaps more, who technically work in the black market. They don't have an official contract, they don't make social contributions, etc., etc. And those people, let's say, whatever the unions get or don't get, they don't. These don't affect them at all, because they are, let's say, completely informal. So, and you have the union leaders who are obscenely rich. But please, I am not exaggerating. These people are, I mean, it's disgusting how rich they are. So, and you know how they made their money. It's not because they cured cancer or they invented, no, it's because basically what we all know. So they don't have social prestige. It's not that, common workers say, oh my God, these guys are the best. No, so the thing is, they still have a lot of power. They still have a lot of parliamentarians that respond to them one way or the other. So it's going to be difficult.
Of course, and Adrian has another issue that he wants to ask about. Is there a chance that gold or silver will be allowed as a means of payment?
I would say yes, with as I envision, let's say, how this is going to play out, which is the dollar will be, Argentina will be officially with the dollar. Let's say you'll have to pay your taxes in dollars and some things like that, and the rest will be whatever people want to, whatever contract you want to do. And Javier has hinted in this direction in several occasions. So definitely gold, silver, Swiss francs, Bitcoin, whatever people want to do contracts in, those contracts will be enforced by courts of law, because there won't be legal tender anymore.
Of course. And well, you've mentioned the future, how you actually think that everything is going to play out. Tell me, do you envision the second term for Milei? Is he going to last for the next 4 years and, going to be actually re-elected?
Well, I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so. Yes, it would be ideal. Let's say, the agenda he wants to implement is an agenda that will bring positive things to Argentina. The main challenge is whether he can apply, as how much he can apply. The president in Argentina has a lot of power, and with this, please, I'm not saying he will become a dictator or anything like that. It's just, that, let's say, our institutional framework gives the president a lot of power. He can do many things. He can't do everything. But so I certainly think he's going to finish his term. I definitely, and I think also that he's going to be re-elected. I think that it's difficult still, because it happened it happened just a couple of months ago, but it has been a tectonic shift what happened in Argentina. The victory of Milei, and still many pundits, even in the country, many observers don't understand the magnitude of the change that Milei's victory represents. I think and again, it's a combination of the man, but also of very deep processes that were happening in society. And that is not going to change in the next couple of years, or on the contrary. And I think when we start seeing the fruits of the reforms that Javier is applying, that will reinforce let's say, the strength of his administration.
We had a lot of ideas about the future, but let's go back to the past issue. We have a question about how Milei views Falklands or Islas Malvinas.
He believes, he has a vision that it's very much in tune with the societal vision of the topic, which is that the islands are part of Argentina, and the country should recover them naturally, via diplomacy, and peacefully, and negotiated, and taking into consideration the inhabitants that are in the islands right now. So nobody is claiming for war or anything like that, or to go to a conflict with the United Kingdom or anything like that. But it's a cause that in general, and I would say, but to a big majority, myself included, by the way, think that it's a, let's say we could say a national cost. Those islands should be are part of Argentina. They should be part of Argentina, and there should be a negotiated solution, diplomatically a negotiated solution that eventually puts the islands back into Argentinian jurisdiction.
Of course, and as I can see, it's also a very alive issue still in the hearts of Argentinians. All right, I cannot actually see any more questions. Oh no, we actually have one more. So this is probably going to be the last question. How do you find political views of Juan Manuel Abad? If you have any opinion about that.
Honestly, at this moment, I don't even know who he is. The name rings a bell, but I don't think he's a very famous politician. Or I'm sorry if Adrian can give me a little bit more of a background. So in principle, no views right now. Sorry, Adrian.
All right, we will see whether there's going to be anything more from Adrian. Okay, so coming into actually the conclusions, Federico, do you think that actually in the nearest future some people will try to migrate to Argentina because of the success of the economical reforms, or Argentina is still going to be like the country of immigrants and still a lot of people will be living it because of the revolution, as we've mentioned in the beginning?
Yeah, well, let's say that would be a good sign for sure. That would be a good sign. People voting with their feet. To the reforms that Milei and his administration are applying. Argentina, but Martin, as you mentioned, and thank you for the mention. Argentina was, I wouldn't say an empty country, but let's say the biggest and more sophisticated and largest Native American cultures were northern than where Argentina is. Argentina is quite far, quite south in South America. And the population of Argentina was how Argentina populated itself, because it had a very classical liberal constitution. Our foundation, by the way, is called Bases, and Milei has called his decree Bases, and also the law is also called Bases. Why? Because in 1852, an Argentinian classical liberal wrote a book called Bases and Starting Points for the Organization of the Republic. That gentleman was Juan Bautista Alberdi. And that book gave birth to our first constitution, which was introduced in 1853. And that constitution was an extremely classical liberal constitution. And that created institutions and created a free market environment that allowed people who were not doing that well, by the way, in Europe during those years, to come to our country and try to start a new life in a context of freedom and allowing, let's say, entrepreneurship. And well, it would be lovely if Argentina becomes that magnet again for people who perhaps are not in the best situation, and they want to go to a country that allows them opportunities to grow and to start a new life. So let's hope so. That would be lovely, and it would be a return to a situation that Argentina perhaps should have not left, but we made a lot of mistakes, because this is not the fault. I mean, it would be great that we could blame, whatever, some external. This was completely done by ourselves, but as I said, I think now the social tendencies are going in the right direction, and this is why the phenomenon of Milei is something that is backed by, I think, a majority, and that majority is going to persist for a very long time.
Okay, and Federico, tell me, if there's a one thing that you want to leave with the viewers from this webinar, from this event, what would be like the sentence or the thesis that they should stick up with after learning everything about Milei and Argentina?
That Argentina needs a lot of support, and everybody can help, and all liberty-minded people need to keep an eye on what's going on in Argentina and support what's going on, because in any, even though I am extremely optimistic, this is going to be an uphill battle. But Milei and his administration are people that have the right set of ideas and are trying to put, the ship in the direction that it needs to go. No one is perfect, but definitely these guys have the right intentions and the right ideas.
Okay, Federico, I will also switch back to Polish right now. Słyszeliście, moi państwo, Argentyna potrzebuje liderów, Polska też potrzebuje liderów. Tutaj chcemy stworzyć jak najlepszą przyszłość dla całego świata. Polsko-Amerykańska Akademia Liderów pozwoli wam się wykształcić na właśnie przyszłość jakiegokolwiek kraju będziecie chcieli. Przyszłość swoją, przyszłość biznesu, kultury, polityki. Zapraszamy do rejestracji do Polsko-Amerykańskiej Akademii Liderów. Wygrajcie wspaniałe nagrody, dokształćcie się, no i twórzcie z nami razem przyszłość. Okay, Federico, thank you very much for the wonderful webinar, and I hope that it was very interesting for our viewers. Please leave the comments, and thank you very much for attending this event.